Welcome to the Gita in Action podcast. My name's Radha, and I'm here with our family of seekers studying the Gita verse by verse. And we are almost halfway through the Gita. We finished chapter 8 at our last session. So that means that today we will be doing the chapter 8 summary review. So these reviews are kind of a nice way to step back and really see the flow of the chapter and where Krishna's trying to take us with each particular chapter. And so we don't get into the verses in as much detail. We flow through them all so that we can see how they connect and ultimately where they take us. So today's chapter 8, that's what we'll be doing. And we won't be reading any verses today. We're going to do the review, the overview, without reading any verses. But before we start, Shakti, do you want to say our prayers for us?
I would be honored. Om Agyana Timirandasya Yananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Bishtam Shtapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kara Mayam Dandatisva Pandatikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagarajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvutam Parijana Sahatam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagat Pate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namo Sute Tapta Kancha Garundi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pananami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tirubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavembhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Guru Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Oh, nice. Thank you. Thank you, Shakti.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So today we're talking about the eighth chapter. We're talking about the eighth chapter. And before I start, when I say the eighth chapter, that I what theme for you guys comes to mind? And this is one that we reiterate really at the beginning of every class. Like, what is this chapter about? If you had to say at a super high level to somebody, can anybody remember? This chapter is about at a high level.
I think if there's a couple of paths you could take, and devotion is the best.
Yes, that's a very high level, and true. Yes.
I I also feel like it's the confidential knowledge is how do we reach the supreme through bhakti and almost like this is the way to go. So this is like our little trail, follow this. And it doesn't really talk about the other really. It talks about bhakti. So it's
Yeah.
like kind of what we said, Shraddha. I have to get rid of Shraddha Jani. Yes, just like what you said. I mean, bhakti is the path, but then it goes into all these details as to why and all of that. And so it's really just, for example, you could read that, and that's like the main guide.
Yeah, and so when we talk about bhakti, what specifically in this path of bhakti is it that Krishna's teaching us that we have to practice?
Devotion.
Devotion and a lot about remembering him. Okay, do you remember that theme? Remembering him, especially at the time of
Yeah.
death. Yes. Remembering him at the time of death. We've talked about that theme I mean, that's pretty much the theme that carries us through the chapter. That's at the beginning of the chapter, Krishna or Arjuna asks 7 questions. And the last question that he asks is about that. It's about remembering him at the time of death. And the first couple verses of the chapter, Krishna answers the first 6 questions or so. But then he spends the rest of the chapter kind of answering that last question. And so that's what we're going to get into here, and you're going to see how it flows, how Arjuna asks the questions, and then Krishna answers it, and how the answer just kind of like blossoms. So that's what we're walking through today. And so we'll just start with the first couple of verses. So like I said, those first couple of verses, Arjuna's asking questions. He's kind of saying, "Hold on, Krishna, let's clear a few things up." He's been hearing all these profound teachings about action, knowledge, devotion. So he's asking, he says, what is Brahman? What is the self? What is karma? What is this world? Who are the demigods? So in other words, like, what is all of this really? And then he goes even deeper in the second verse. He says, who is the Lord of sacrifice? And how does he also live in the body? And how this is the ringer that gets kind of carried through the rest of the chapter. How can those engaged in devotion know you at the time of death? So he's asking, how is God both cosmic and personal? And how can I remember him when it matters most? Because if we remember way back when, Krishna just finished the 7th chapter by saying that those who take shelter in him remember him at the end of life. And so Arjuna's kind of zooming into that, double clicking that. He wants to know how. So we're getting deeper and deeper as this wisdom is just unfolding. And this is such a human question too. We all know how easy it is to forget Krishna even in daily life. So how can we possibly remember him in our final moments? So that this concern, this longing, this is what sets the tone for the entire chapter. So if somebody asks you, what's chapter 8 largely about? You can say, Krishna's answering Arjuna's question about how we can remember him at the time of death. It's like a high level. It's called Attaining the Supreme. So then in the next 2 verses, in verses 3 and 4, Krishna answers the first 6 questions. And the first 6 questions were kind of like vocabulary words, so to speak, that Arjuna is like wanting Krishna to double click on. So first was Brahman, the indestructible, transcendental living entities. Brahman. This isn't some abstract energy. It means the living being, the soul itself, for all purposes here. And karma. Karma means action that binds us. The cycle of acting, desiring, and being reborn and again. That's karma. In this context, karma means a lot of different things, but in this context, we're talking about being bound to that cycle of birth and death. And then akarma, and these, I'm just kind of going over these quickly because we've talked about them quite a bit, but they're not really the essence anyway. So if this is a little too fast for you, don't worry. We're going to get into kind of the essence, the nectar of the chapter, but we'll just kind of breeze over this. So if karma means the action that binds us to this cycle of acting, desiring, being reborn again and again, akarma would be like the opposite of that. And that's action that frees us. So action that frees us out of this cycle, that gets us out of this cycle of birth and rebirth. And the way that we do that is by acting for Krishna. So we put God in the center, we act for Krishna, and we get kind of pulled out of this karmic cycle of birth and death. And the important thing here to always remember is that it's not the external action that matters as much as the consciousness behind it. So why we're doing what we're doing. That's what we really are focusing here. When we act for a personal reward, that's karma. When we act for God's pleasure, that's akarma. That's pure action. That's how we get free from bondage. And then one more term here. We're just going through all these terms. Krishna redefines sacrifice here. So he kind of broadens the definition of sacrifice. It's not just about lighting fires and chanting mantras. It's about offering what we could have used for ourselves to serve something higher. So with this kind of sets the foundation for where we're going next, kind of understanding these terms and the meaning behind them. It kind of sets a nice foundation for where we're going next. And before we go there, we get a few more terms thrown at us. And that's where we are in text 4. We get a few more terms thrown at us. These terms, if this was a long time ago, so you guys might not remember these. And again, we'll just kind of breeze through them. Important, I think most of you kind of get the concepts of this, but again, we're just setting up this Vedic framework so that we can better understand where he's taking us. So he talks about adibhuta, the field of matter, the constantly changing physical world. So we just understand that as it is. It's just the field of matter. And then we talked about adideva, the divine intelligence behind matter. So this was represented by the universal form, the divine intelligence behind the matter. And then adiyagna, Krishna himself, the Lord of sacrifice. He's in everyone's hearts. So again, just some more vocabulary words to throw at you. But the important thing that this understanding does for us is it shifts us from ritual to relationship. And that's where we're trying to get here. When we can realize that every offering, every act of kindness, every sincere effort, anything we do really can become an offering to Krishna when it's done with devotion. When we understand that, hey, God's not just outside creation, he's within it, he's sustaining it. He's receiving all of our acts of sacrifice, which if we remember, we defined as acting for something, serving something higher than ourselves, not just ourselves in the center. Right? Sacrificing what could be used for our pleasure for something higher than us. Okay, so that's just the first 4 verses. And like I said, it's just setting the tone. But in the next verses, Krishna is going to begin to unpack this 7th question. And this is, what's the 7th question? Somebody shout it out. What's the theme of this 7th question? It's remembrance of him at the time. I see Meg shaking her head, nodding her head. At the time of death. This is the 7th question. And this is where we're going now. Okay, are you guys with me? Are you with me still? Can you give me a thumbs up if you're with me? Okay. Okay, great. So then we get to this 5th verse, and this is a really important verse. In this verse, Krishna says, "Whoever quits his body, remembering me alone, attains my nature without doubt." This is again, it's kind of setting the tone. This is Krishna's clear promise. And he's not vague, he's saying it with certainty. And this is comforting because it's showing how eager he is to bring us back to him. He's not sitting there tallying our mistakes. No, he's ready for us. He's waiting for our remembrance. But here's the key, and we talked about this a lot through this chapter. The key here is that remembering Krishna at death, it doesn't happen by accident. It's not just coincidental. It's the natural result of practicing remembrance in life, moment by moment, choice by choice. And this is what we've really brought out in this chapter. How can we remember Krishna more in our daily lives? How can we live in a way? How can we act in a way? How can we speak in a way that's reflective of our remembrance? And how can we notice when we're not? So we talked about this so much. And then in text 6, Krishna takes us to what we like to call the law of last thought. So this is where he says that whatever state of being one remembers at the time of death, that's the state that they're going to attain. So basically, whatever you're thinking about at the time of death, if you're attached to, your family or your home or your job or your position, right, that's the destination that you're going to attain when you come back. Because we all know your next body is determined by what you want, your desires, and what you can afford, your karma. So that determines the body that you're that your soul chooses. But if you're remembering Krishna, you can get out of this cycle of desire, birth, rebirth altogether. And this is where Krishna's trying to bring us. So be careful what you think about, because your thoughts are shaping, are creating a template for your reality. That's what's happening. That's what's happening here. And all the way, and this takes us all the way to that final moment where we're at, that wherever your consciousness is shaping what's next, what's after that. So what we think of at that moment, it's going to mirror.
I got to clear up.
Does somebody have a question here? It's going to mirror what we've been thinking about our whole lives. So, sorry, I was just meeting someone. I got distracted. Okay, so our mind, our intelligence, and our ego, they're the subtle body. They carry our impressions and desires into the next life. So we all, when our soul goes to another body, our mind, our intelligence, our ego go with it. So if our desires are material, we come back to the material world. But again, if our desire is for God, we return to Him. So this is why daily remembrance matters so much. We're training the mind for that final test. And it's up to you. It's up to you. Ultimately, we all have free will. But be mindful. Know that. Your mind, your intelligence, your ego, it's going to go with you to your next body. And if you're working on, if you're so attached to this position, your soul is going to find a body that's suitable to obtaining that in your next life. What do you think, Katie?
Hi, well, thank you. A couple of things, and they're more like little examples. I hope they're not, I don't, it doesn't seem like something super profound, but it just so came to mind. Yeah, I mean, I think like with the question of, how do we get closer to this practice of being able to remember at the time of death? And yeah, I think a few like main things are happening. Like we're doing them, and Krishna is facilitating it so much. Like we come to a teacher who has Krishna has given them an amazing ability to impart and deliver, and sometimes it's hard to get off mute. So I was right there with you. Like I think it was very clear about what this chapter was about from your classes. So first we've got to like have some faith, come seek some guidance and information and connection, and then like little by little practice, and sometimes we don't even realize that's like happening. And then also we need the encouragement of each other. And I feel like it really folds into also all the reminders of honoring and being okay with where we're at, like little progress, or still having like, oh man, I lost it there, and just being able to like continue on, and I think some examples, like recently I've found myself a couple times being in like a difficult conversation and expecting myself to need to step away or to kind of like freak out or cry, and I've just kind of been able to be like well, and that's different. I feel like it's like changing a little bit, and it's totally by the grace of Krishna and like you guys. So I'm so grateful. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes. Oh, so beautiful. Thank you, Katie. We're all right there with you. We're all right there with you. Thank you so much for sharing. Denny, what do you think?
I finally learned how to put my hand up
Great.
after all this time. But you was talking about remembering Krishna when you're dying, and I hate to bring up my suicide, but I was I was slowly trying to kill myself because I wanted to see what it was like to actually die. I know that's I got help for all that. Maharaj actually has a devotee actually contacted me daily, and
Wow.
everything like that. But I was actually every night before I would take whatever I would take, I would actually lay down and I would actually read the teachings of Chaitanya, and because I wanted to remember Krishna when I was passing, and I would have visions of what I assumed was Krishna. And so I think you can actually remember Krishna by thinking about him, reading about him, and actually focusing on Krishna's appearance, before while you're passing. And I went and seen Kripa Maya last week. He actually is leaving this week to go to Texas to see his son. And, he's got bad health, but his son is actually friends with a heart doctor. And so while he's there, he's going to get other opinions, because Kripa Maya is a really small person, and they're afraid to do the surgery because of how small he is. He can't put on weight. And so he told me, he said, Denny, he said, before, I pass, at least I know Krishna, at least I know Chaitanya, at least I know Arjuna, I know the Bhagavad Gita, I know it all, but I got to get closer with Krishna so I remember him when I pass. And he said, my chanting is never perfect, but I'll chant while I'm passing away, leaving this body. So I remember Krishna and I come back, as a Krishna conscience in my next life. But, when you're passing away, whatever you're thinking about is actually, what you're going to vision while you're passing, I think. And my experience of, pretty much dying every night. But, I just wanted to share that because you was talking about that, and I really think it's something that can be done, because if you think about something, normally you dream about it, while you're sleeping.
Yeah.
So I think it's a big thing. And, as long as we're chanting and thinking about Krishna, my thing, I think about Prabhupada more than I think about Krishna, which is because, I've always had a vision thing with Prabhupada, closeness with him. So, but I just wanted to share that. I appreciate it.
Yeah. No, it's a nice point. Many of us have experienced those kind of spiritual dreams when you're really immersed, like a full day of reading or kirtan, or the spiritual dreams are so sweet. They're so sweet. So yeah, if we're practicing enough, it will come to us at that time. And I like how you said too, we can know all the books, we can know all the text, but it's not the same as having a relationship. And that's what makes all the difference. That's why we study. That's why we try to know the books, the text, so that we can have relationship. And that's what makes the difference at the time of death. Thank you. Thank you all. So that brings us to text 7 here. And this is where Krishna, he makes it practical. He says, think of me and do your duty. So Arjuna, think of me and fight. So he's saying, don't wait till the end of your life to remember me. Remember me while you live, while you work, while you fight your battles. This is where we really start to understand what it means to remember Krishna, not just at the time of death, but before we even start our work. It's a pre-action meditation. It is, and when we begin from that space, when we remember God before we even act, then everything that we do becomes sanctified. Our work, our thoughts, our relationships, they all become part of our spiritual journey. And then Krishna continues in the 8th verse. He says, he who meditates on me constantly with his mind fixed on me is sure to reach me. And again, simple but powerful. It's just this process of bringing the mind back again and again. We don't have to be perfect. We don't have to be consistent. I mean, Denny's example, gosh, you were trying to bring the mind back even when you're battling these suicide attempts. So it's like, whatever you're doing, we can try to bring the mind back. It's not about perfection. It's about consistency. And every time the mind wanders, bring it back. And this steady remembrance, not forceful, but faithful, it's both the path and it's the goal. Simple, but profound. So then in the next section, and in verses 9 through 13, that's where Krishna talks about remembrance through this mixed devotional practice, where we talked about other paths mixed with bhakti. So Krishna's discussing bhakti, but bhakti mixed with the aspirations of a yogi that's seeking just liberation from the cycle of birth and death. It's not necessarily relationship, just to get free from the cycle of birth and death. So this is yoga mixed with bhakti, and it's remembrance through this practice, yoga mixed with bhakti. So in verse 9, text 9, Krishna describes how the yogis meditate on him. He gives us like 10 different meditations. It's really beautiful. If you remember, seeing him as all-knowing, seeing him as the oldest, the controller, smaller than the smallest, the maintainer of all, beyond all material conception. Like he's both infinitely great and infinitely great and but intimately near. Krishna knows everything. He knows past, present, future. Yet he's the kindest friend. He's the controller of all things, but he gives us free will. He's vast enough to sustain the universe, but he's small enough to live in the heart of even a tiny ant. This is a beautiful verse. When we reflect on it, it fills us with this humility and this warmth that he's not just the cosmic Lord, but he's our closest companion. So that's text 9. And then as we move to text 10, Krishna now describes the yogic perfection. So we got kind of technical when we talked about how the yogi fixes the life air between the eyebrows and keeps the mind steady and remembers the Supreme. Like it's just this very technical process of Ashtanga yoga. And it's super advanced. It sounds super advanced. It is super advanced. But the principle here that's important for us is that a peaceful mind comes from a purified heart. A lot of us want peace. And a lot of us think that the only way we can obtain peace is if we can get our environment perfectly controlled. But the Gita teaches us that if we can purify our heart, we can have internal peace regardless of our environment. And we purify our heart by chanting, by praying, by devotion. We're cleaning the heart, like scrubbing it free of lust, anger, envy. These are the things that really disturb our mind, that disturb that peace of mind. So as that heart becomes pure, remembrance becomes natural. That's when it becomes much easier to remember, when our heart is clean. It's this remembrance that carries us home. So that's what we're taking away here. And then these last couple verses in this section about mixed yoga, about yoga mixed with Ashtanga. Krishna gets a little bit more into the details of this classic process. So he talks about studying the Vedas, chanting Om, living in detachment, celibacy, leaving the body through this deep meditation. If we remember, we talked about like bringing the prana up all the way to the head, and then they get to choose when the soul leaves their body, and their head explodes. It's like this crazy. I mean, it's this very advanced thing that a yogi can do, and it's a real path, but it's not easy. Like it requires isolation, years and years and years of practice, things that most of us just can't do in this modern life. But that's why Krishna describes it. And then lovingly offers something better, because he says that if someone practices yoga, chants Om, remembers the Supreme Person, they reach the spiritual world. But the key word there is remembers, because it's this remembrance, it's not the ritual that connects us to God. So even in this technical process, the thing that we want to take away from this is it's that element of bhakti, the love and devotion behind it, that makes it complete. And everything else is just like the vehicle for that. And that's what brings us to this next section, the next 2 verses, where we talk about remembrance through pure bhakti. And this is like the heart of the chapter. Are you guys all still with me? No, guys, it gets a little bit technical when we get to Ashtanga, but Krishna just brings that in to show us, to kind of compare the 2 paths and show us, hey, look, again, bhakti's like the elevator ride up. You can take this tough path, you can climb the mountain, all these technicalities, all these austerities, strict discipline, or you could just take the elevator ride up. because ultimately what they're doing is just to remember me. All that they're doing, controlling their breath, their mind, detaching, it's just to create this environment where they can remember me. But guess what? You can remember me right here, right now, in whatever you're doing. And this is the elevator right up. This is where he says in text 14, one who always remembers me without deviation, I'm easy to obtain. Whew. And this verse is like a sunrise after a long night. Because he just described yoga, this breath control, this renunciation, this meditation. He's saying, hey, there's a simpler way. Just remember me with love. And that's like a weight off the shoulders. So many of us think we have to do all of these things, to be worthy enough for to, we have to work for it. It's, we just have to love God. And we just have to do practices that help us love God. We just have to live in a way that helps us love God. And we just have to make choices that are conducive to that. So this is why bhakti is the fast track. It's because it's powered by this affection. It's not effort. Because we all know you can get so much further off of Krishna's mercy, God's mercy, than our own effort. And our own effort is like a drop in the ocean. And Krishna's mercy is like the entire ocean. And this is the practice of bhakti. And it makes sense too, because when we love someone, remembering them, it's not hard. It's just automatic. Everybody think of somebody that you love. It's not like you have to work to remember them. It just happens. If you really love them, you want to be in their presence. You want to serve them. You want to see them smile. This is love. This is why love, it's when there's love, it's even if there's effort, you don't feel it so much. We talked about, like, I have a 1-year-old who's actually not sleeping through the night right now, which is really great. but I love her so much that it's like it doesn't even bother me that much. I don't even really mind so much. Whereas, you think if you were to do this for any other circumstance, just lay awake in bed for hours and nights, you'd be like, you'd have a problem. You'd have like insomnia that you needed to get fixed, or, but when you're doing it for your beloved, you enjoy it almost. So this is what Krishna is saying. You don't have to leave the world to find me. Just bring me into your heart. And this is why he calls it easy. And this is a cool part in the Gita where he talks about if bhakti's easy. And he doesn't say this very often. I think this is like the only place that he uses this word easy, because love makes everything easy. So when we talk about the other paths, they move through control. Bhakti moves through attraction. And that attraction, that love for God, makes him not only reachable, but it makes him near, it makes him real, it makes him personal. So that brings us to text 15. And Krishna speaks very matter-of-factly here. He tells us the world's a place of misery. It has thorns. This is where we talked about that thorn analogy. Remember, the world has thorns, but if we worship him, we don't have to come back to it. So it's like you're walking barefoot on a thorny path and you get pricked by a thorn, and the warning, it's not like negative. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a warning. It's a warning for us. And this is what the Gita's doing for us. It's telling us pain's going to come. That's the nature of this world. You're going to experience pain. If you're walking barefoot on the path, you're going to get pricked by a thorn. Be prepared. There's no way to escape it. And Krishna's not trying to scare us. He's trying to prepare us. And if we remember, this is where we talked about putting on our spiritual shoes. And that's what the Gita does for us. These spiritual shoes are absorption in God. We're resting the mind, the heart, on something higher, something that's unshakable. And we know that wherever our consciousness is, that's what we feel the most. So if we're focused on how our feet are feeling, our bare feet, we're going to feel those thorns. But if our mind is resting in something higher, if our heart is in something higher, we might not even notice it. And this is because of our spiritual shoes. And so this brings steadiness. And the steadiness comes from being absorbed in the Supreme. When we're so absorbed in something higher, and you don't even notice the pain. Again, I am thinking of childbirth right now. It's like the most uncomfortable, painful thing ever. But then you see that baby, it's like you don't even remember the pain. It's like not even there. You're just so absorbed in love for that perfect being. You don't even care that you're just like, you know, bleeding out. Sorry, women that have babies on the call know what I'm talking about. Sorry for those of you that maybe have been a little bit much, but this is it. You're so absorbed in something higher. You're relishing this relationship that the pains and the miseries of the world, they don't faze you so much, and you expect them. You expect them. It's just like when you go into childbirth, it's not going to be comfortable. It's going to hurt. But still you're like bring it on. Because you know that it's bringing you to something, to a love that's so much higher. So the Gita helps us resize this suffering. We don't deny pain. We just elevate our consciousness. We just focus on the light at the end of the tunnel. And it's that light that brings us even through the tunnel. What do you think, Stella?
Yeah, I even pain, like childbirth pain, that's a beautiful example and very true. But even pain that seems to have no purpose, like I have a migraine condition that, I'm pretty much in pain every day. And, it's the more I could be a really bitter person because of it, but it's Krishna's energy. There's nothing outside of Krishna. So sometimes when it's really bad, I just think that it's his energy swirling around. Um, and also that, like, I'd be such an enjoyer or like a materialist if I wasn't reminded every day. I'm such a stubborn person that it like takes daily pain to
Mhm.
remind me that I'm not of this world. I'm not, the world isn't the place I want to be. And
Mhm.
even a chronic daily pain situation, which I would wish on no one, honestly, can, if viewed through affection, be like just Krishna hanging around and saying, not this world. I want you somewhere else. Not this world. This world's going to bring you pain. And I got to remind you every day, but I'm going to because I want you to leave here and come home. Because I love you. And it's like, so, there's of course the pain of abuse, but that's controlling. He's just affectionately reminding me that he wants me to come home. And even, if
Perfect.
you, uh, even if you like, I've been in the holy dham and in terrible pain, but I'm in the holy dham,
Mhm.
so sometimes I'll remember that I was in the same situation there, and when I was there I was so grateful to be there. So sometimes I try to remember that to get through, you know anyway.
Yes.
Us pain warriors know the drill.
That's perfect. That's a perfect point of this verse too, is that this perspective turns life from punishment into a classroom. And that's the
Yeah,
way we have to see it like that. It's teaching us, just like you said, this is no
yeah,
place for us. You don't have to walk on thorns all the time. You can come
yeah,
home
yeah,
where, yeah, and that's what it's teaching us. Beautiful. Beautiful. So that's the section. 14 and 15 is about pure bhakti, remembrance through pure bhakti. So now we're in the second to last section. This is verses 16 through 22. This is remembrance supported by understanding the difference between the material worlds and the spiritual worlds. So again, this whole chapter is about remembrance. Remembrance through Ashtanga yoga mixed with bhakti yoga. Remembrance through pure bhakti yoga. Remembrance supported by understanding the difference between the material and the spiritual world. So this is where Krishna is kind of double clicking on the material world and then the spiritual world. And if we understand these differences, how this helps us to remember. So in text 16, he gives us two paths to outcomes. He says, you can do your best, you can accrue good karma, you can just be a good person, and you can reach higher planets. But understand that this is still temporary. Even if you're just a good person, your destination is going to be temporary. Only devotion leads you to a destination that's beyond time. And this is where we talked about how, if you do good things, you give in charity, you're a nice, good person. You're going to accrue these karmic credits and you're going to go to these higher heavenly planets where you get to enjoy. It's like you get to use all your tickets that you accrued. It's like a luxury vacation that you earn tickets for. But then once you run out of money, you have to come back. So Krishna's telling us here, he's inviting us to aim beyond achievement, even beyond like the most pious, the nicest things you can do here in the material world. That's not enough. You need eternal relationship with him. And that's what's going to free you from this cycle entirely. And then he goes in to talk about a day in the life of Brahma. If we remember, he makes that point where we really get this conception of cosmic time. He talks about how a single day for the creator of this universe spans millions upon millions of our years. And his night is just as long. So he's like, we like to think that we are like the most supreme being. But the reality is there's a spectrum of consciousness. And the very creator of the universe, he has a life that's millions and millions of years long, or a day that's millions and millions of years long. But ultimately, it's still temporary. So it's like wherever you go in this material universe, know that it's still temporary. You may get a little bit longer life. We have longer lives than flies do. So there's beings that have longer lives than we do, but know that it's still temporary. And then he goes to this verse 18 where he talks about how creation breathes. We talked about the different cycles. He talked about at dawn, the world appears. At dusk, it rests. We see this rhythm everywhere. Seasons, tides, sunrise, sunset. So he talked about how souls aren't destroyed when the cosmic night falls. So souls are never destroyed. They're eternal. They rest and then they re-enter the creation when the new day begins. So he just really zoomed out and looked at this cosmic cycle. But again, the message here is the same. It's simple. It's nothing material is stable. It's all going to come and go. Even out, if you bring that out to the life of the most powerful being in the universe, it's ultimately everything's still temporary because it's material, and that's the nature of material. But the soul is eternal. So the point here is anchor in what never dissolves, and that is God. That is God. And this last verse that talks about the material universe, just to get this perspective, this cosmic time and the nature of material energy. He talks about how the whole universe, it expands and withdraws by his will. And this point's humbling because again, it's bringing us to this place to understand that we're not in control. The bodies, planets, arenas of action, they all come and go. The soul remains. And ultimately, we're in control of none of it. We're in control of none of it. And when we feel that smallness, our heart naturally looks for something that's solid, something that's unshakable, something to take shelter of. And that something is Krishna, is God. Okay, so this is again remembrance by understanding the difference between material and spiritual. So that was material. So then Krishna kind of starts to bring us into spiritual. And that's where the next few verses kind of zoom in on. This is a beautiful turn. He talks about how beyond this cycle of manifestation and dissolution, there's another nature, a nature that's eternal, a nature that's transcendental, that's never annihilated. So when everything material winds down, that's what we just talked about. There's a cycle for it. Material energy, it's born and then it becomes unmanifest. So when everything winds down, there's a realm that remains exactly as it is. And then Krishna talks about this unmanifest, infallible destination. He starts to reveal his own abode. And this is the true goal. This is the highest destination. He's saying reach there and you don't come back. He said everybody's ultimately striving for that, whether you're a materialist or you're seeking impersonal reality. Ultimately, you'll find fulfillment when you go home. And that home is Krishna's eternal supreme abode. And then he makes it crystal clear. Now we're at text 22. He says he's the supreme person and he's attained by devotion, by pure devotion. And everything exists within him, and he is also within everything. This is beautiful. This is like mind-blowing. It's like the sun that stays in the sky yet pervades the world through his light and his warmth. So Krishna remains himself, just like the sun remains himself, while his energies sustain us all, like the sun's heat, the sun's light. So this is how he's both everywhere and he's within our hearts. So this is Krishna describing the spiritual reality. And it's like when we really think about this juxtapose, when he lays it out like this, we think about material energy, it's manifest, it's not manifest, it's it's just so temporary, right? And then the spiritual abode, it's eternal. It's I mean, this is your final resting place. It's like the ultimate shelter. When you look at them side by side like that, it's really clear. Like, why would we take shelter in anything material? Krishna's telling us right here, by nature, it's going to come, it's going to go. It doesn't matter who you are in this material universe, how rich or how powerful you are. It's going to come and it's going to go. So anchor yourself in something that's enduring, something that's eternal. And if hopefully that will help us remember when we just understand the difference there between the two. So that's this section. And that brings us all the way to the final section here, verses 23 through 28. And this is where Krishna really brings the point home of why remembrance through bhakti yoga is easier and more effective than the other paths. Are you guys still with me? How are you doing? I love seeing Meg smile the whole class. It's my favorite. Okay, so let's finish this last section and then I want to hear some reflections from you all. So this last section in text 23, this is where Krishna talks about the two different departure paths for an Ashtanga yogi. And this was super technical, if you remember. It depends on timing. It depends on the method used. And again, just juxtapose this to devotees. Devotees just love God. They just place the whole matter in God's hands. And they go peacefully when he calls. So when we look into these different paths, 24 talks about the path of light. And this is these yogis who have really refined their consciousness. It's fully purified, it's aligned. And the tradition says that when their soul leaves the body, it's like guided by presiding deities of light. They're like station masters on a long train ride. They're guiding the soul to that spiritual destination, right? Along this bright route to the spiritual effulgence. But if a yogi is practicing but not quite there yet, a different route applies. And this is where they rise, they're guided by different deities, and they rise, they go to places like the moon where they get some period of long enjoyment for their efforts, and then they have to return again. But the point here is that both paths require effort and discipline. The difference is the degree of realization and alignment. But again, Krishna's point isn't to entangle us in this celestial logistics. It's to show us the contrast. That both routes are still within the system. That's what we should be seeing here. Both routes require this extreme amount of discipline, of austerity, of technical timing. Right? And at best, you'll get to that spiritual effulgence. But that's not really that's not the Krishna's final abode. That's just like the outside of it. You're not really getting relationship with God there in that destination. And so he's showing us that only this bhakti path truly ends, or truly ends in this abode, in Krishna's spiritual abode. And the only paths only even have success because of the bhakti elements sprinkled in. So bhakti is like, it's like that secret sauce that makes everything work. But the difference is if you do the other paths, they can be very austere, very difficult. But with bhakti, it's like you just have the secret sauce, and it just takes you high. So then we're at 26, and he talks about the bright and the dark paths and how they represent two different directions for the soul. So again, this Ashtanga Yoga, the dark path, it belongs to those that are still bound by attachment and forgetfulness of God. So they've tried, they've made some progress, but ultimately they're not there yet. And so they remain in this cycle of birth and death. But the brighter path, it leads yogis to these higher realms, even God's effulgence, which is that the spiritual world, technically, the Brahma Jyoti. Right? So they're freed from birth for some time, but ultimately, without a personal relationship with God, that the freedom doesn't quite satisfy the soul. Bhakti goes beyond both. So if that was a little bit confusing for you, that's okay, because we're getting to the part that's we really want to take away here, is that bhakti goes beyond both. So for a devotee, liberation is not about timing, it's not about technique, it's not about perfect sloka memorization, thank God. It's about consciousness. Wherever there's sincere remembrance of God, that's where there's true freedom. So this takes us home to these final two verses, 27 and 28. 27, the conclusion here, it's tender and direct. Devotees may understand these different paths, but they're not bewildered by them. They know, just fix your mind on God. Don't obsess over cosmic schedules. Don't think that you have more control than you do. Just give it all to God. Surrender to God, love God, serve God, remember God. He'll handle the details. It's like when you know the restaurant owner, you don't have to obsess over reservations and getting there right at the exact time. You just go whenever, and the restaurant owner's got your back. That's what we're doing here in Bhakti. We're developing a relationship with the restaurant owner, so to speak. So the grand conclusion here, and the sweeping promise, we're on the last text now, is that devotion doesn't deprive you of any spiritual benefit. Whatever results that people get from studying, from sacrifice, from austerity, from charity, that's included with bhakti. You get it all. And beyond that, and devotion ultimately takes you to that supreme eternal abode, but you get everything that all the other paths will give you. It's like that all-inclusive. You're not just getting parts, bits and pieces. You're getting the whole thing. And bhakti doesn't just refine life. It doesn't just make life better. It does, which is great, but it transcends it. It takes you out of this cycle of birth and death completely. It's like we talked about that $1 million gift. If you get $1 million, you already have tens, ones, fives, tens, hundreds. Like you have all the lower denominations, but you ultimately have, because you have that $1 million. And so if you're practicing bhakti, you're going to get knowledge, you're going to get peace, you're going to get liberation, but you're going to get something even greater than that, which is union with God and in His eternal abode when your soul is finished with this body. So this is the closing thought. Okay, this is the thread through it. It's simple. That was a lot. That was a lot of details. It's quite a journey to get us here. But ultimately, it's just, this chapter is meant to just bring us back to this principle of remembrance. Right? Practice now what we'll ultimately want most then, and should want most now. Right? Train our hearts to remember Krishna today, so that He's present at every turning in our lives, especially that final one. Because once we reach Him, we don't have to come back, because this love has brought us home. And that's the final point. It like sums it all up in a sentence of this eighth chapter. This eighth chapter, remembering Krishna, especially at the time of death. How do we do that? This is how we do this. This is how we do it. And all these things are meant to help us to do that. All these things we learned along the way. So what do you guys think? I think we have a couple minutes for reflections here. We started a little bit late, so let's hear a reflection. Aaron, what are you thinking?
I'm actually just thinking a lot about the like how inclusive this philosophy is. I really like how like thinking about the karmic path as like, you know, for nice people who are doing and good people who are doing good things, but maybe are non-believers or I don't feel like I've had an experience in religion where it like accounts for people who are not exclusively practicing this religion and saying these prayers and like accepting these vows. So I feel like that like it's really like illuminating how deep this philosophy really is and how inclusive it is. Because that's always really bothered me about other religions of like, very much like our way or the highway. And it's like, but God must be bigger than than our one language or this one name or whatever. So I'm just thinking, yeah, just thinking about that and really like how appreciative I am for how it like I feel like answers a lot of those like kind of persistent questions I've had about yeah, just like the limitations of religion as like an institution. And then obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but I feel like that just makes me think of like what initially attracted me to bhakti of the fact that like um it can be present in any religion or like it's not just bound by like these rituals and these texts um but that and just hearing teachers in our lineage talk about like the fact that whatever path is leading you to love of God is the path you should be on and so you know that's pretty radical compared to other faiths or other um practices, I guess, because I come from a background in Catholicism and that door is very closed. And and I know there are other religions that are that way as well, and it's like very much like this is the path and there are no other paths. I mean, I used to lay awake at night as a kid, like really concerned that like, what if God isn't Catholic? Like, what if he's Protestant or Methodist or Baptist? Because I literally only knew of other flavors of Christianity. So I couldn't even think, what if God was Hindu or Muslim or Jewish or any other thing? And so yeah, I keep going back to that initial thing that attracted me to bhakti and I love that like this is just like broadening that and like showing me how much deeper and even more inclusive the philosophy is.
Wow. That's such a beautiful realization. And I feel the very same way about Vedic philosophy. It's like bhakti, bhakti is universal. Just like you said, bhakti is developing love for God. And it gives us a process to develop love for God, but it doesn't even need to be exclusive to that. There's, it acknowledges there's ways to develop love for God. And also, it's also very refined. It's like it gives you a very detailed map. It's not just like heaven, hell. If you're good, you go to heaven. If you're bad, you go to hell. It's like there's lots of different grades of heaven and hell. There's different planetary systems. There's different bodies you can get that could be hell-like, that could be heaven-like. It's very, and it all depends on the karmic credits that you acquire through your life, good or bad. How that, how that shapes your soul's journey and destinations. So yeah, I feel the very same way. Thank you for bringing up that beautiful point. Beautiful, beautiful point. Okay, my friends. Well, today we are out of time. I'll be honest, I like doing these overviews because we get to see how everything comes together, but I don't like them because we kind of have to get through it so we can do it all in an hour, and we don't hear as much from you guys. So next time, Thursday, we'll start chapter 9 and we'll be back to our regular cadence. So thank you all for coming and tolerating, and I can't wait to see you all on Thursday. Hare Krishna.